Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, we break down Trump's new tariffs, what they mean for Iowa farmers and the state's ag economy. And egg prices keep going up, and they're not expected to come down anytime soon. How that's impacting Iowa producers, restaurants, and your grocery bill. And reimagining education without recreating the wheel. How Des Moines schools are responding to a decline in enrollment.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Brooker. Last weekend, President Donald Trump announced tariffs of up to 25% on imports from Canada and Mexico and 10% on imports from China. The three countries are the United States' largest trading partners. Trump did temporarily suspend the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for at least 1 month after ongoing negotiations about border security. So a tariff is essentially a tax on goods imported from abroad. They're usually paid by the importer, and the extra costs are generally passed on to the consumer. Trump has said the 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods are because China is not doing enough to stem the flow of drugs like fentanyl from coming into the U.S. In retaliation, China has ordered 10 to 15% tariffs on a number of American imports. Now, according to the American Farm Bureau, together, Canada, Mexico, and China account for half of all American agricultural exports. Just last year, the Bureau said the U.S. sold more than $30 billion in farm products to Mexico, $29 billion to Canada, and $26 billion to China. A report last June found that about 22% of Iowa's economy, or $53.1 billion, is tied to agriculture. So is 1 out of every 5 jobs in Iowa, something that people here in the state care a lot about. Chad Hart is an agriculture economist with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Chad, thanks for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
So, Chad, there is a lot of uncertainty on what this could mean for Iowa's agriculture sector. For farmers who want a little bit of clarity, what could tariffs mean for price of corn, the price of soybeans?
Well, as you mentioned, tariffs are import taxes. So the tariffs that we put on here in the U.S. are not the tariffs that do damage necessarily to U.S. farmers. It's the retaliatory tariffs that we see coming from a China, a Canada, or Mexico. And they typically are targeted at agricultural products because the tariffs have to be pointed at something that, if you will, we would export to that other country. And so if we think back to President Trump's first term, when tariffs were put in place, we did see significant damage from that. What happens is it drives down the prices that our farmers see for their crops and livestock, and that puts them in worse financial shape as we move forward. And in fact, if we think back to President Trump's first term, he had to set up government support programs to assist farmers through that difficult financial time.
Is there anything that Iowa farmers learned from that first term that they may be thinking about preparing for, as they're thinking about the possibility of retaliatory tariffs?
Well, I think they now know sort of how the tariff game, for lack of a better term, is played amongst countries, that you do tend to see one country move, the other country respond. And farmers have figured out that they are a pressure point when it comes to how other countries approach the U.S. with tariffs. The reason that is because when you think about what the U.S. exports to the rest of the world, agriculture is a major component of that. Therefore, we become the natural target for when those other countries retaliate. It's going to be the farmers that feel it. But also I think farmers are sort of expecting or looking for the federal government that if we're going to put tariffs in place, that maybe there's some support mechanisms that will come down the line to help farmers given the financial situation.
And we know the tariffs for Canada and Mexico are on pause, but there are some retaliatory tariffs from China right now that have been levied. Is that currently having an impact on Iowa's agriculture economy?
In this case, indirectly, I'm going to say. When you're looking at directly on or corn or soybeans or beef or pork, the answer is no. China chose not to target any direct agricultural commodity. That said, they did target agricultural machinery. So companies like John Deere are now facing increased tariffs looking into the Chinese market. And China also held out the possibility of escalating, changing the product mix that they target with tariffs in the future.
We know that there's been a downturn lately in the ag economy. What does that mean for just how much gloomier things could get financially, with the threat of a trade war looming?
Well, I think when you're looking at agriculture, I've got to take you back a couple of years. If we go back to say 2021, 2022, we were looking at agriculture sort of in a golden era. Record net farm income across the country. It's a very strong agricultural economy then. Since then, we've seen it slide, and we've seen some fairly significant reductions in farm incomes across the nation. Now as we look, we're around our 20-year average in terms of net farm income, but it feels so much worse because revenues have fallen, but costs have remained high. And so that has put the financial squeeze on farmers. And now you're talking about the possibility of tariffs squeezing even harder on their financial markets.
Another thing I'm hearing from farmers is, what does this mean for my inputs? Things like feed, fertilizer, the price of machinery, availability of machinery. Is there any, estimate that you have on what retaliatory tariffs could mean for impact on inputs?
We really can't put a strong estimate out there yet, just because we don't know the full scale of how these tariffs will be implemented across different countries. What we can say is that, as we look at places like Canada and Mexico and the possibility for those tariffs there, we do know those will increase input costs to farmers, especially from like Canada. The worry would be on fertilizer. We tend to import about 75% of all the potash we use to fertilize our farm fields. When it comes to agricultural machinery, a lot of parts are made in both Canada and Mexico. In fact, you may have heard that around the automobile industry. It's also true within the ag machinery industry, that we rely upon that cross-border trade with our North American partners to basically build a lot of the machinery we use throughout the land.
Well, Chad, we know there's a lot of uncertainty out there, so thanks for giving us a little bit more context. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, when we come back, how bird flu is affecting producers here in Iowa and what that means for you while checking out at the grocery store. And a little later, how the state's largest school district is responding to an ongoing decline in enrollment. Welcome back to Close Up. Bird flu is forcing farmers to slaughter millions of chickens a month. That's caused the egg industry to face major challenges. Nearly half of all birds killed by the virus in 2024 were egg-laying hen deaths that occurred in November and December, according to the USDA. The average price of a dozen large grade A eggs was $4.15 in December, up 50 cents from November and up more than 36% from last December. The U.S. Ag Department predicts prices to rise another 20% before the year is over. Now, restaurants are feeling the pinch. Last week, a national restaurant chain, you may know, Waffle House, added a 50-cent surcharge for every egg in a customer's order. They do expect it to be temporary, but they also acknowledge they're not sure when and if prices will come down. And just about a week ago, 100,000 eggs were stolen from a distribution trailer in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. The total loss to the company is estimated at around $40,000. Oof. Well, Chad Hart is an agriculture economist with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Chad, thanks for our conversation this morning. The price of eggs seems to be all that anyone can talk about on social media, at the dinner table. Can we drill down what is driving prices up?
Sure. The biggest thing, as you mentioned, is bird flu and how it has definitely limited the supplies of eggs we have because it's limiting the supply of chickens that we have to lay those eggs. But at the same time, too, what we've had is really strong demand for eggs over the past couple of years. If you think about eggs, we typically have thought of those as a very inexpensive form of protein that we tend to eat almost every day. And so it's hard to adjust when you see that imbalance between the egg supplies that we have versus the demand that we've always had for eggs.
This also comes at a time where we're seeing a change in administrations. There's been a lot of conversation about how much does, an executive branch, how much does a president have, to do with the price of food, specifically now the price of eggs. What is the impact that the president can have on something like this?
In this case, they have no impact whatsoever. This is truly up to the disease and how it moves through our industry at this time. When you're looking at the bird flu outbreak we're dealing with now, this has been probably the longest running bird flu outbreak we have ever seen. Typically, the outbreaks are more like what we see with human flu, where they're here for a season and then it tends to go away. This one's basically been around since 2022, and that's why it's continuing to exert such strong impacts on our prices.
So how much longer could consumers be feeling the pinch?
We're going to feel it for a little while. As you look at, we're still having the outbreak. In fact, as we look at the last week, we've seen an outbreak here within the state of Iowa. that has hit. So we're going to be dealing with this for at least a little while longer. And as long as we see these waves of bird flu, we're going to see basically waves within the egg pricing over time.
And then turning to producers here in Iowa, how much does this impact them?
It definitely impacts them, because when you think about when they find one bird that has the flu, we have to eliminate the flock because it is basically fatal to the flock. And so that means that those farmers are facing severe financial hardship when they have to reduce that flock down. And so there are government programs to help support them, but it doesn't fully cover the cost of the losses that are accumulating.
Is there anything that farmers can do to take precautions to try to prevent, outbreaks like this?
Arguably, they already are. The biggest thing they'll talk about is biosecurity, that they're trying to keep the virus at bay as best they can. But the problem they're having is that this disease finds its way around that biosecurity. It spreads in a variety of ways, and that makes it incredibly difficult to hold at bay.
Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come on Close Up, we'll hear from the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools on their broader rollout of the district's Reimagining Education Plan, what it includes, and the goals leaders, parents, and students hope to achieve with it. Welcome back to Close Up. I'm joined now by Dr. Ian Roberts. He's the superintendent of the state's largest school district, Des Moines Public Schools. Dr. Roberts, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, over the past several weeks, your district has unveiled some details about a new 10-year strategic plan called Reimagining Education. Walk me through some of the elements of that plan.
Absolutely. This is one of the most exciting times in the history of Des Moines Public Schools. Our Reimagining Education Plan is actually our response to sort of the needs that the community have shared with us with regards to what they're looking forward to when they think about a quality preschool to grade 12 public education system. And so we spent the last year or so engaging with members of the community, about 80 individuals on a committee that included parents, teachers, leaders, and certainly students. And we spent a lot of time, certainly a significant number of hours, thinking about what do we need to put in place from a strategic standpoint to ensure that we are creating a truly world-class school system that will become the destination of choice for any parent or child who's of school age. And so the plan is dynamic, and it really outlines the steps that we are planning to take to accomplish some big and bold goals.
So what are some of the things that will help accomplish that?
Yeah, so, some of the work that we've embarked upon already includes really looking at the current educational offerings. We are thinking about expanding our Montessori schools, for example. We have Coles Montessori that over the last 10 years has certainly produced some of the highest performing academic scores in elementary and middle schools. And because of that, we have decided that as a part of reimagining education and reinvigorating our schools, to expand our Montessori offerings to each of our geographic regions here in Des Moines. Secondly, we are looking at what we're calling signature schools. This is where we are going to build on programs that are really grounded in research and strong practices. Across the country, this committee that I just referenced have visited high-performance school districts. We've worked with researchers to look at programs that can really produce strong outcomes to students. And so our signature schools will include some thematic approaches to science, technology, engineering, and math, so STEM. We will consider maybe schools that are going to focus on performing arts. We're going to consider schools that are looking at health sciences. The goal is to make sure that we are really responding to the changing needs of students today. And thirdly, and certainly this is not an exhaustive list, only 3 of those big shifts we're making, is we are being really thoughtful about how we are utilizing our physical spaces, right? The average age of our school buildings, 64 schools, is about 80 years old. And certainly we want to make sure that we are in a dynamic environment where students, when they knock on the doors of our schools, are coming into buildings that are not only refined, but are sophisticated. And so what we thought about, having worked with a lot of experts in the school facility planning space, is to think about how we manage the reallocation of resources to meet the needs of not only our students, but teachers and leaders who are driving some of the change.
A lot of different pieces there, and I know that's just scratching the surface.
It is.
Now, we also know since 2019, there's been a steady decline in enrollment in the district. And when a student leaves the district, a lot of times that's through open enrollment, but they take that funding with them. And so we've seen, Des Moines Public Schools has had to have a series of budget cuts, cutting millions of dollars from the budget. I know that the plan aims to reverse that trend by 2030. How do you get there? How do you get more students, staying and transferring into Des Moines public schools?
So there are three sort of strategic approaches we're going to take, right? The first is to make sure that we look at and become more conversant with the enrollment trends. And what we've seen is sort of a challenge that is faced not only by Des Moines public schools, but every school system pretty much in the state and around the country, declining enrollment because of the competitive and challenging and dynamic school environment that we face. Secondly, we want to reverse that trend, and the way for us to do that is through our Reimagining Education plan. We are really committed to offering, through some bold initiatives, high-level, forward-thinking, creative, and innovative instructional programs that will get our students to come to this system that will attract parents. We currently have programs that are world-class programs. Our Central Academy, for example, offer more than 30 different CTE programs. And so our goal as a part of the Reimagining Education plan is to expand on those programmatic offerings. Finally, we are thinking about how do we not necessarily just think about what happens with a student while they're here, but we're thinking about how can we prepare students to be dynamic contributors of our community. And so we are embarking upon what we're calling a Diploma Plus program. We are excited about this initiative because essentially what it does is every single student who walks across the stage of the Des Moines Public Schools will not only receive a high school diploma, but it will have a diploma plus something, and that's something that we're thinking about is at least one industry recognized certificate that will make them really attractive for any potential employer. So this is just scratching the surface of this really bold and dynamic plan.
Absolutely. Another piece that parents are thinking about is safety. They want to make sure they're sending their kids to a school that's safe as they're hearing about threats, shootings, violence, but also things like bullying and mental health. How's the district approaching assuring parents that they're taking steps to make schools safer?
Yeah, so we have certainly had this on our radar for a very long time. And the commitment that we've made to both students and parents is to think about safety as a sort of multi-layered challenge. First, we want to make sure that every single student who sits in our classrooms enjoys psychological safety. So we want to create environments that are supportive of them. And one step that we've taken is to partner with a number of mental health organizations where we're offering some improvement or increases in counseling services, not only in person, but we are now offering telehealth counseling services. Of course, secondly, we've looked at the impact on cell phone use and students' mental health, and we've piloted a program this year. What we found after evaluating that pilot is that once we are sort of teaching students how to have sort of responsible use of their cell phones, it reduces the distraction to instructional programs and increases student attendance, student academic achievement, and it helps our students to build stronger relationships with their peers and teachers. And when we think about physical safety, over the last couple of years, the Des Moines Public Schools have looked at some really sophisticated safety and security measures. We've hardened all of our buildings. We've looked at and invested in resources such as impact-resistant film. And while this is always a challenging topic to talk about, we've also invested in some sophisticated weapons detection system that uses artificial intelligence technology. So while we want to make sure that we are providing all of our students with a quality and world-class education, we are going to continue to prioritize their well-being, which includes safety, both psychological and physical safety of all of our students and every adult who serves them.
A lot of information there. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Well, our conversation will continue right after this break. Stay with us. Our conversation with Dr. Ian Roberts, Superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools, continues. Dr. Roberts, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking about reimagining education, this 10-year strategic plan, and there are a lot of pieces to it, modernizing buildings, education changes. How do you plan to implement that and make sure that it's actually creating quality outcomes and not just making, surface level changes? Sure,
Amanda. So because it's a 10-year plan, and it's a 10-year plan, a journey that we've embarked upon over the last year by having this committee of stakeholders really convene, about 80 individuals that included parents, teachers, leaders, and students, to sort of do a needs assessment about where we are in terms of not only our facilities, but that needs assessment included just looking at our enrollment trends. It also looked at the academic programs that we're offering. And we've asked ourselves the question, are we truly serving every single student who knocks on our doors and meets the needs of all of those students? And the answer is no, right? While we have a lot of outstanding programs and practices that we can certainly brag about, we want to make sure that we're accelerating improvements. And so as we embark upon this journey over a period of 10 years, we want to make sure that we are doing so thoughtfully and strategically. And the strategic plan that will guide our reimagining education, reinvigorating schools sort of endeavor is anchored in 5 big pillars. And those pillars includes a really solid look at how do we cultivate equity and excellence in teaching and learning, to make sure that we are providing our teachers with targeted and differentiated professional development, supporting their evolving needs around providing students with a solid and quality pedagogical experience. The second is for us to think about how do we ensure the safety and well-being of our students and every adult who serve them. And that's the second pillar in this 5-year strategic plan. The third aspect of this plan, which is what we're calling a big pillar, is around how do we cultivate transformative talent. In addition to wanting to provide every single student with a quality education, we want Des Moines Public Schools to be the destination of choice for every educator who so desires to either teach, lead, or serve in our schools. The fourth sort of pillar in our 5-year strategic plan really encapsulates the reimagining education, reinvigorating schools work, and that is how do we cultivate excellence in organizational effectiveness. And that's a really critical part of the work, because the reimagining education plan will certainly look at being thoughtful and strategic to get to the desired outcome. And the fifth pillar, as we think about this much longer runway for us to achieve these ambitious and audacious goals, is to ensure that we are partnering with and cultivating community collaboration, ensuring that our parents are a critical part of the work. And so we are going to implement this plan in a very thoughtful and strategic way, giving ourselves a longer runway of a decade.
Now, very quickly, we only have a little bit of time left. I also want to talk about chronic absenteeism. You have seen success in getting more kids to attend school in first semester, but we're in second semester now. Are you expecting to continue seeing improvements?
We're expecting to see the trend around improvement of chronic absenteeism. And the reason we are expecting and actually predicting that we're going to see significant drops, where we're encouraging more students to attend school, is because every single adult in our buildings are invested in making sure that they get students to come to school through a myriad of approaches.
Well, Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.